Hello, boys and girls. It's me, Steve, one more time. We've been talking about resurrections this week. We've been talking about the resurrection from the dead. And today we're going to talk about Jesus' resurrection. His resurrection was very important. If he had not overcome death, being the Son of God, then we could not. He had to have the power over death. He did have the power over death. Death is in the world because of sin, but Jesus died to pay the price for sin so we could live and live again. So that's how we can be raised from the dead, because he has that power to forgive sins and also to raise us up from the dead. Now, the death and resurrection of Jesus, like all these other resurrections that we've been talking about, the resurrection of Jesus is not just a story. It's not like your superheroes in the cartoons. It's not like people who can travel through time like they did in the Marvel movies. But Jesus, being God, has the power really over life and death. And so Jesus, when he died, made sure, and God made sure, that everyone knew that he was dead. The Roman soldiers that were there, that put Jesus on the cross, that put the nails in his hands, they witnessed his death on the cross. And one of those soldiers made sure that Jesus was dead by piercing his side with a sword so that the blood and water flowed out of Jesus. There was nothing left in him, no life left in him. So the Roman soldier made sure of that. And then Pilate, the governor who had sentenced Jesus to death, he sent a Roman centurion to go and check. He sent guards to make sure that Jesus was dead and to report back to him. He wanted to make sure that Jesus was dead. And then, of course, when Jesus was dead, when his body was dead, Joseph and Nicodemus, two men that were on the council that ruled in Jerusalem, took the body of Jesus and wrapped it in spices and cloth and buried it in a tomb. Now, when I say they wrapped it in spices and a cloth, that's very important, because when a body is dead, it begins to stink pretty fast. I don't know if you've ever been driving around in the summertime with the windows down on your car, but you drive by roadkill, maybe a deer or a skunk or something like that in the road, and you could smell it right away. You know the smell of death. And so people have always done things to keep the bodies of their loved ones from stinking after they died. And so that was a custom of the day. They would bring spices and they would cover the spices. And it tells us that Joseph and Nicodemus, when they came and took care of the body of Jesus, they put 100 pounds of these spices on Jesus' body. 100 pounds. So whatever Jesus weighed, you add 100 pounds to that. They had a pretty heavy job to carry that body away and to put it in Joseph's tomb. And after they put Jesus in the tomb, the guards sealed the door. They put a very heavy stone over the door of the tomb to make sure that no one could sneak the body out. Then the guards stayed there at the tomb day and night for 3 days. They were going to make sure that nobody came to take that body out. They were making sure all these things were done to demonstrate, to make sure that Jesus really was dead. It's not a fake. It's not a movie. It's the truth. Now, after 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb, the women that knew Jesus came bringing more spices to put on the body. Now, they they knew Jesus, and they also knew that he was dead. That's why they brought those spices. So we know that they knew Jesus, and we know that they knew he was dead because they watched. They were also there when Jesus was crucified, and they were worried. They were worried that when they got there, they wouldn't be able to get into the tomb because they knew about the stone. They wondered who would roll away the stone for them so they could put the spices on the body. So there's another tell that Jesus was really dead because the women witnessed it. They took the spices because they knew that Jesus was dead. And then even though Pilate made sure that Jesus was dead and had the guard seal the tomb and made the guards watch the tomb, it was open and empty when Mary came. Now that was very important because Mary knew that Jesus was dead. And it was very important to Mary. And you know how I know it was very important to Mary? Because it says she ran to tell other disciples. It was very important for Mary to tell the disciples what she had found. She found an empty tomb, and what she had not found, she told them, she had not found the body of Jesus. So these things were very important. It was so important that she ran. Now it was also important for Peter and John. When Mary got to the apostles and told them that the body of Jesus was missing, and that the stone had been rolled away from the tomb, well then Peter and John ran. They ran as fast as they could to the tomb, so it was important to them as well. Now this is the first Christian race. They raced to the tomb, and John tells in his gospel that he won. He doesn't give him, he says that disciple whom Jesus loved, but he won. John won the race. He got there to the tomb first. But you know what? He didn't go in. When Peter got there behind him, Peter ran in, right into the tomb. Where's Jesus? Where's the body? I know he's dead. They saw him die. They wondered where the body was, and it was very important to them because they had witnessed Jesus die on the cross. They saw what was done to his body, nailing him on that cross and piercing him with that spear. And Jesus then was alive. And it says that he showed himself there when Mary was wondering where Jesus was by the tomb. Jesus showed himself there to Mary. Mary saw him, and he told her to go and tell the others. And Mary was the first to see Jesus alive again. And Jesus gave Mary a very important job after he was raised from the dead. He gave Mary the job of going and telling the other apostles. Not only did she run and tell them that the body of Jesus was missing and the stone was rolled away from the door, but she went back and she went back to the tomb and she saw Jesus, and Jesus gave her a job to go tell them another thing, that she'd seen Jesus, that he was alive, and that he talked to her. And he would go and show himself to all the disciples that day. And all the disciples saw him that day except for Thomas. Thomas was absent that day from school, I guess. I wonder if his mom gave him a note. And they were all very surprised when they saw Jesus because they saw him crucified on the cross. And they told many people what they had seen, and they wrote it in the Bible so we could read it and be surprised that someone was raised from the dead, and so that we could have hope of being raised from the dead too. So you don't have to be afraid of death. What you do have to do is you have to believe in Jesus. You have to study your Bible and read all about Jesus and all about the things that he did, all about his death and his resurrection from the dead, and all the things that his disciples then taught, that he taught them. You learn all those things, then you can be raised from the dead too. He is alive, and that means he has the power over death and can raise us up from the dead to be alive again. That's our last lesson for this year's VBS. And it's our last lesson also for this year's 3rd and 4th grade camp. You know, I'm all mixed up this year. Everything's out of place, and we don't get to see you, and we don't get to be together at the camp, and we don't get to have our campfires and weenie roasts, and we don't get to do all those things that we normally do at camp. But we sure look forward to seeing you again next year. We'll have camp next year, Lord willing, and I want to see all of you 3rd graders who will be 4th graders there at the camp, and for the rest of you, you might move up next year, but you'll have fun. Be sure and make sure you get to camp next year. It's a lot of fun. We'll see you.